It's time to get down to business on TK Business Live, brought to you by the members of the Topeka Independent Business Association. Now, let's join Tara Dimmick, owner and publisher of TK Business Magazine, as we take a look into the business world of Topeka, Kansas.
Hi, and welcome to TK Business Live. This is Tara Dimmick, and it is great to be with you this Sunday. Chris Hamm is going to be joining me. He is with Premier One. He is an expert in technology, and so we're going to talk a few expert tips with him. And then I have Marsha Pope joining me. Marsha is the president of the Topeka Community Foundation and does just an incredible job. She's been with the Community Foundation for a long time, but just recently became president over the last year. And is making, she hit the ground running. And so I'm excited to talk with her and learn a little bit more about what the Topeka Community Foundation is up to. And, they are getting more and more involved in where community development really plays an impact in economic development. And it kind of plays into that concept of, I don't know how many you played on sports teams, but, there was always this saying on the sports teams I was on where you're only as strong as your weakest link. And so how do we help become strong throughout our community, and where can we develop our community in even better ways? And I think that the Topeka Community Foundation does a great job of looking for those gaps and being a part of that conversation. I have Chris Hamm joining me. He's with Premier One. Tell me, what should small businesses be aware of when it comes to those IT threats?
Yeah, so when we look at IT threats to businesses, we really kind of classify them in two areas. You have non-malicious risks, and then you have malicious events. So a lot of times people think of maybe a tornado wiping out their business and all of their IT assets with that. That's kind of a non-malicious event. But often overlooked are things like human error, people accidentally deleting files, things like that. On the flip side of that, we have malicious events, and a lot of people think of, big, bad, scary hackers. But it really kind of boils down to a few different key areas that we see on a day-to-day basis. One of them being ransomware. That's a very hot topic today, as well as phishing. Okay,
so phishing. That's spelled with a PH. I know that much. Tell me a little bit about that.
So phishing is a term used to describe attempts by attackers to get you to do something that you normally wouldn't do with your computer. So oftentimes that's clicking a link that you wouldn't normally go to.
This is where IT people hate email. Right? Because email is the demon of being able to bring in malicious things, right?
It sure is. And actually, there are some very interesting statistics about that. So email is the top attack vector for things like phishing.
I kind of feel like an IT professional that I knew that.
You did. So between email attacks and websites, that accounts for over 80% of the IT security threats that we see today. So email is definitely an important area that we really look into.
So when employees get really irritated at the IT person, they need to take a chill pill and realize that this is really a very critical area, and they're not just saying it to be...
It is an important area, and that's why at Premier One we do emphasize user education a lot. So we actually run simulated phishing attacks against our own employees, and that's a very good way that we find for not only ourselves but our customers to kind of keep tabs on how their employees are doing when it comes to phishing attacks, and kind of stop them with a simulated attack ahead of time and then educate them about that, instead of waiting until it's too late, until they enter their credit card information into a bad website or click on a malicious link of some sort.
Oh, wow. So what else do we have to watch out for?
So the other thing we really have to watch out for today is ransomware. And ransomware is a little bit different than phishing in that its purpose is to make your data unusable and kind of hold it hostage, asking you to pay a ransom, usually several hundred or even several $1,000s, to really get your data back. And, if you don't pay that ransom, your data could be gone forever.
Now, I thought when I first heard of these things that I was like, that's never going to happen. And then I've heard of small businesses that have been hit by this, as people you'd never think were, and they paid because they didn't know what else to do.
Absolutely. We see it all the time. And, a lot of clients come to us and say, why would we ever be a target? We're small. We're really nobody in the grand scheme of things. but you're a potential paying customer to a ransomware attacker. So ransomware is not always targeted to specific large organizations. A lot of times it will be sent out in big email campaigns, and at the end of the day, whether the dollars come from you or a large organization, it's still money in their pocket.
Well, and some small businesses might be attractive because it's a smaller dollar amount, but they can't afford the lawyer, the IT, or all the different things because they haven't done any of that stuff to prevent it.
Yeah, and
so they just pay the bill.
And small businesses are often less prepared. Yeah. So, kind of our model implements a few different layers of security. And so the first layer is really what we consider prevention. And that's the kind of things that we put in place to really limit an organization's exposure to a risk in the first place. So that would be things like user education, where we are simulating attacks ahead of time to really educate our users. But then the next layer would be protection. So assuming that those risks still end up at our front door, what do we do with them? And those would be different things like firewalls, security software, and also backup and disaster recovery. Because at the end of the day, even if you're well protected, you can still fall victim, and you would have the choice of either paying a ransom to get your data back and furthering the problem, or using your own means of recovering from some kind of backups.
It's terrifying to me, I got to tell you. It's just like a whole nother ball game of you can, at least the attacks you can see, you can understand, and this is a whole different. You can't even see it. It just hits you, and you didn't know it was happening. So, if a business owner or your management staff, if they're thinking about what to do, how do they, and thinking about some of these, and they're keeping them up at night, how do they start moving forward with you with Premier One?
So at Premier One, we really take a holistic approach to looking at an IT system. Part of the problem with any of these threats, whether it comes down to phishing or ransomware or something else, is that a single point of entry or a single weak point can really cripple an entire system. And that's why it's so important that we look as a whole at an IT system, not just at, what kind of firewall you use or what kind of antivirus. So we really start things with the full system assessment, looking at every angle, and actually trying to do our own attacks against a company in kind of a sanctioned format. Mm-hmm. And then from there, we make recommendations on how to close any gaps and then maintain that moving forward.
Well, that's awesome. Chris, how did they get a hold of you to get this whole process started?
So anyone that wants to talk with us can either start by visiting our website, www.premier-one.com, one spelled out, or you can call us anytime at 785-354-8233.
Chris, thanks so much for joining me.
All right, thank you.
My name is Ken Daniel, and the name of my company is Midway Wholesale.
What is TIBA? TIBA is advice and support. TIBA is information and education. TIBA is a voice for small businesses.
You're going to meet other small business people. You're going to have an opportunity to adopt some of the things that they found to be successful, and you're going to make some lifelong friends.
The Topeka Independent Business Association is strong because of its members. Become a member today by visiting topekatiba.org.
I have Marsha Pope joining me. She's the president of the Topeka Community Foundation. Welcome, Marsha.
Thank you.
Great to have you on. So tell me a little bit about what is, and I got a full disclosure, I serve on the board. So what is the Topeka Community Foundation for people?
The Topeka Community Foundation is a nonprofit organization established in 1983, actually with a $10,000 grant from the Junior League. We've grown from that time to $50 million in assets now, and really our role is three things in our community. We're donor services, we're grant makers, and we're community conveners. So as proud as we are that we've grown to $50 million in assets, we're equally proud that in the lifetime of the Community Foundation, we've also granted $50 million back into our community around programs and projects that are important to our community in the areas of health and human services, arts, animals. If it's charitable and our donors care about it, then a grant has probably been made toward it.
So what does it mean? Like when you talk about donor services, I think this is where some people may get hung up. Like, well, how do I be a donor? What does it mean to be a donor? Is it just them?
Yeah, right.
Those people?
Well, We talk to people about what their charitable dreams are. And then in business terms, we have different product lines, which are different types of funds that we can use to help them make their charitable dreams come true. So we have scholarship funds for people who want to invest in the education of children. We have field of interest funds. Say you care about literacy and you want to support only things in that field, you can establish a fund. We can accept grant applications and make grants in that field of interest. We can create designated funds where you love an organization and their mission and you want to make sure that it receives your funding in perpetuity. We can help you set up a fund that is designated specifically for that organization. And then the most flexible of all is our donor advised funds. And when we talk about donor services, that's really where we can play a key role. You can have a donor advised fund through a Fidelity or any kind of other organization like that, but they don't know our community and they don't know you. And so when you set up a donor advised fund with the Community Foundation, we get to know you. We know what you care about. We keep our finger on the pulse of the community and what nonprofit organizations are doing. And when we see there's a good match, we like to let you know about opportunities and connect you in ways that we think that you'll find meaningful. A Fidelity is not going to do that. And so that's an important role we can play. That's how we can add value to someone's charitable giving.
So that brought up like a bunch of questions. So let's see, where should I start? One would be if somebody wants to get more information about this, how do they go about the process of even having the conversation, or do they need to be ready?
No, we talk to lots of people and we let them know if we're not a great fit for them. We want donors who are very satisfied with the services of the Community Foundation, and we're not a great fit for everyone. So simply calling the foundation, 785-272-4804, or going to our website and sending me an email. And I have lots of conversations every week with people just about their charitable giving and how we might be a great fit for them.
So you mentioned the part of having a pulse on the community. And I know being on the board how much information you guys actually get when it comes to and are involved in and sit on boards and sit on committees that are talking about where our community is at, where the needs are at, where the gaps are at. But talk about some of the ways that you share that pulse with the donors.
Right. Well, if you'll think back to last week when Grace Med had their press conference and went public with their new building and with their capital campaign, we had been in conversations with them for a long time. As a matter of fact, the study that there was a coalition in Topeka that received a grant from the Sunflower Foundation to do a study to see what the best organization would be, what that structure would look like for providing the kinds of services that Grace Med does. That grant was housed at the Community Foundation and administered by us. So we knew early on what the issue was. We knew it was being studied. We knew what the results were. As Grace Med came on board, we became friends with them. We've had conversations with them. And so before they had their press conference last week, we had a donor sneak peek inside their building. And so if you had a donor advised fund at the Community Foundation, you received an invitation to that. We had a small continental breakfast, very informal, but Randy Peterson from Stormont Vale Hospital, he spoke a little bit about the history of healthcare in our community, why there's a need for Grace Med, and how important it is to have this model of healthcare in our community. Then Dave Sanford, the executive director of Grace Med, he spoke to the group and let them know who Grace Med is, how they're staffed, what their funding model looks like, what the capital campaign will look like, why they have the services that they do. And then there was a chance for questions and answers with our donors. And so that is something, again, Fidelity doesn't do that. And so if you care about the community, if there are causes or issues that you care about, we're at our best when we're grant makers, donor services, and community conveners all at once. And that day we really were. We've granted to Grace Med, we'll be giving them some money to assist them for patients who come in and can't afford that first setup fee to establish Grace Med as their medical home. There will be a grant from the Community Foundation waiting there to assist them do that. From that day, we've had donors who have also made grants to their capital campaign because they've found the work of Grace Med so compelling that they want to support their great work in our community.
Yeah, that reminds me. I need to have Alice come on, who is the executive director of Grace Med. And if you haven't heard about it, just to give a quick synopsis, where Dillon's was on Huntoon that closed. It's so exciting because it needed something there that could help the neighborhood, and it is exactly what it needed. It's the health. It's right where those people, where anyone who's in that area can utilize it, or outside the area can utilize it. And Grace Med is going to serve that neighborhood and our community in such an amazing way. And it's going to make a beautiful place in the middle of that area that they were concerned about, what would fill that space that was Dillon's, and having another building that may go dilapidated because it's not being taken care of. Now it's going to not just be taken care of, but it's going to be beautiful.
Right.
And it'll be a great piece to that neighborhood. It's right by the library. I mean, blocks away from the library. You just think about that area and what it could use, and that's exactly what it needed.
And they're a great community partner. They don't even really want to stop there. It's their goal to go into schools and create clinics inside of schools where kids are, where transportation is an issue, things like that. So they have a campaign goal for that Dillon, what we call the Dillon's building, but they have a stretch goal that would allow them then to go. They've already designated where their first spot would be, so that they can really meet people where they are.
It's incredible. I mean, we talk a lot about economic development, and we talk a lot about businesses. And on the show, of course, we're always focused on businesses. But, poverty is a major issue in our community, and they are doing an incredible job to come where people are at, meet them where they are at, help them through the process, and give them and empower them.
And I think there's lots of really great things going on in our community. And as each study comes out and each report card is unveiled, I think what we're seeing is community development is economic development, and economic development is community development. And as both of those things are strengthened in our community, as one is strengthened, the other one grows. And as that one is strengthened, the other one grows. And so working together to make these kinds of great things happen everyone wins.
I agree completely. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, we were talking about funders, so we'll go ahead and go to the seed fund. So talk a little bit about what the seed fund is, and I'll share my story with you as well. But
seed funds, one of the things in the last year as I've transitioned into this new leadership position with the Community Foundation is to reach a younger generation of donors. If you looked at our donor base, and we're happy to have all of the funds that we have, but what's lacking is that next generation of donors and engaging them in what we think is the impact that charitable giving can have, and letting them see that. But the younger donors are different than what our older donors, and their starts are different. And so while we have a fund minimum at the Community Foundation, every business model needs to work. What we want to do is make the entree into having a fund more accessible to younger people. And so what we've done is created seed funds, and that is for young people, or if you call yourself a young person, this fund will allow you a period of time where you can be putting money regularly or in lump sum over time, and to reach our fund minimum, and no fees are charged until you've reached the fund minimum. And then when you make your first grant up to $1,000, the Community Foundation will match that. And so it's just our way of saying, if you haven't seen yourself at the Community Foundation, the circle is growing bigger, and there is room for you there. And we hope that this is an idea that will catch on.
So this idea for us caught on, and for my family, and we as soon as this idea came about, I think I was like, hey, I think I would like to do this. This sounds like a great idea. And part of the reason was because I really wanted to create a fund, or what I would also call a foundation in my head, that's our family, so that my kids could be empowered to give, and they could see the impact of what their time is, but then also what their money is, and what it can do for other things that are happening. So we have this whole thing where they have to, any money they get, they give the first 10% into a charity jar, and then they divide the other two into savings and spending, and then they get to do whatever they want with the spending. So the charity jar has been growing and growing and growing, and it's actually, we just wrote our next check because it's all coming from the kids, because it's their charity jars that they are now investing into our fund so that they have voting rights to the decision-making power of what our fund will decide in 3 years, because we're going to take 3 years to grow the fund up to the 10,000. And that's just a monthly, I think the monthly investment is like in the 200s. It's not even like a huge monthly investment. I think we're going to try to do $300 a month. I'm full disclosure here. So that we can manage that process of investing it each month, being committed to that piece of it, so that we can have the fund and then, set some goals as far as what we want the fund to be at a later date, so that we can really make an impact. And, we talked with the kids about it, and they're invested in it, and they're excited about what they can do to it, to the point that they gave all of the money in their charity jar because they want to be a part of this as well. So for us, it's the big picture of teaching our kids about philanthropy, teaching them about what this type of fund can do, where to me, the money can grow quicker and we get to do more with our money, which is something that's very exciting to me, for our money to work for us.
And I think what a lot of people will find too is when we do have these kinds of funds where people can come together, there may be a need in our community, and the Dimmick family might not be able to alone make a grant to solve that issue, and the Pope family might not, but together we can. And so leveraging those grant dollars based on institutional knowledge of need that the Community Foundation has is another role that we can play in our donor services work.
Yeah, how exciting when you guys can see the problem, and then we're all able to come around it and say, look, we can make this happen. There's some great stuff that's going to happen. Okay, so flipping again, have so many things to cover, and so I want to get to all of it. But Topeka Gives, it's coming up soon.
Tuesday, June 6th.
Yeah.
7 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock at night inside Fairlawn Plaza Mall. Again, this year, 168 participating organizations, $83,250 in match money. And we just invite people to, it's an in-person event. You can support the causes that you care about, either with cash, check, or credit card. But we just invite people to come out. We've been really pleased that in addition to the donations to organizations, the education that takes place that day is really great. People bring their kids. A lot of organizations gain new volunteers that day, and the organizations talk to each other. And so we've had lots of groups not know. They've had needs themselves that other groups there can help provide. And by connecting at Topeka Gives, those connections are made.
Yeah, in some ways, I think the dollars are huge. I mean, I'm not going to discount that, but the connections and the collaboration that happens because of Topeka Gives is also huge. And so it's a way for, I see it as a way to also just encourage philanthropy within our community.
Yeah, it's a great day of giving. It's something, to see people standing in line to make a donation. It's pretty, it's a good feeling. The staff, we feel good about that. But it's also a great day just to see how charitable our community is. And they are. We live in a very generous community. And so to celebrate that generosity with one day devoted to the great things that surround charitable giving, it's a fun day.
It is. And you just need to get off of work for a few minutes to come down and do it, really, because you have to be in person.
It is.
But you can get off of work for the lunch hour and come down and go walk around real quick, figure out what you want to give to. Sometimes people already know, but it is valuable to walk around and get to know who's over there and what other organizations are out there. And I think the other thing I saw over the period of time that has been going on is some of the duplication that have found ways to work together too, not just collaborate on different things, but actually, you do that too.
Right.
We're doing that. How do we do that together? What are we doing different, or how do we fill the gap? And there's been a lot of really good things that have come.
There has been.
Okay. So any last thoughts, any last things that are going on at the Topeka Community Foundation that, that you see in the forefront of what you see for the future?
Yeah, one of the things that we want to do is find creative ways to leverage our donor services, grant making, and community convening. And I think some of the things that we have on our radar right now, we'll be announcing in 2018 We're kicking off something very exciting in November of this year. And so there are just lots of opportunities to be a part of the Community Foundation. And we just would welcome people, if they haven't seen themselves being part of our family, to give us a call and see where it is that they might fit with us.
Okay, so I've got about, 1 minute here. Scholarships. How many scholarships? I mean, this is a crazy process. This is amazing what the Topeka Community Foundation does in regards to scholarships in our community.
Yeah, we have, we administer probably 50 scholarship funds where our reading teams make that selection process. We've gone online, and the great thing is the kids can answer a handful of questions, and then they hit enter, and all of the applications that they're available or that they meet the criteria for, then that information feeds into those applications. So then they can just add a couple of essay questions or provide some application-specific information, and they will then hit the submit button, and they've applied for those scholarships. So we had so many applications this year that we had to get 2 extra reading teams to read those applications. So the applications come to us. We provide the criteria to the reading teams. They read those. And just last week, the letters went out. Everyone who applied got a letter, either a yes or no letter. And then next week, we have an event where we read about why the fund was established. And often it's in memory of someone. So there were probably some kind of tragic circumstances in a lot of cases. We read about that. And if the donor or the family is there, they stand up. We read the winner's name and what school they'll be going to, and they stand up. We have a photographer there, and we get their pictures together, and it's a very meaningful evening. It's probably the most meaningful evening of the entire calendar year for the Community Foundation.
That's awesome. What an impact it's making on the future of our community, right, and the future leaders of
and in scholarships too. Often it's, while the money is important, when a student gets that yes letter and knows that someone who they're not related to, who doesn't know them, found them to be outstanding and is investing in their education, that alone can make a difference in the life of a student.
And all of this process is online at the Topeka Community Foundation's website.
On our website.
So we're thinking about this as you're getting ready to have maybe that senior this next year, so that you go online and you make sure they get through the scholarship process. There's no not doing this particular process. I hope I just increased your number of applications.
That's right. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for what you're doing in the community too. It's been great having you as the president of the Topeka Community Foundation. How long has it been now?
Well, almost a year.
Almost a year, and she's been nonstop since she hit the ground. So it's great having you step up.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Marsha. Thanks so much to my guests, Chris Hamm with Premier One and Marsha Pope with the Topeka Community Foundation. And thank you to the Topeka Independent Business Association for your support of this show. They make it happen each week. You can learn more about the Topeka Independent Business Association at topeka.tiba.org. Thanks so much for joining me this week, and I look forward to chatting with you next week.
Thanks for joining Tara and her guests on TK Business Live. Join us again next Sunday at 11:30 to hear more from our community business leaders, entrepreneurs, and people making a difference in the landscape of how business is progressively moving forward in Topeka. TK Business Live is brought to you by the members of the Topeka Independent Business Association.